Hey, I'm Rob Gantt with the Goose Creek Gazette and the Berkeley Independent. I'm here today in Somerville with my Somerville Journal Scene teammate Roger Lee, and this is our latest edition of Football Talk. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Tony Pope State Farm. Call Tony Pope State Farm for your car, home, life, and small business insurance. Roger, we've reached the final week of the regular season. Actually, some teams will play a +1 game next week, but for all intents and purposes, this is the last week of the regular season. Got some pretty good matchups on the slate. How you feeling going into the week 7 of the high school football season?
You hit it on the head of the nail there. It's some really good games this week. Strong way to end the regular season. Some teams going into the postseason and others not. But I think the games this week are going to be exciting if you're looking to get out and go to a game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some good games to take in this Friday night. I'll start on the Berkeley County side of things. You okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, cool. Starting off with the Cross Trojans, they're going to hit the road and go to Lake Marion. The Trojans are trying to finish the season strong after losing to rival Timberland last week. Timberland won that game 18-0. It's a rivalry matchup. Actually, it was Wright Bowl 1. Sean Wright, the coach of the Cross Trojans, is first cousins with the Timberland coach, Gregory Wright. They're in their first Wright Bowl game. Gregory Wright got the better of the deal, 18-0 Wolves. But back to the Trojans. Cross will not have a +1 game on November 13th, so this will be it for them. In that Timberland game, Santori Jones and Tyleek Green combined for 18 stops for the Trojans. So I look for Cross to go down to Lake Marion, give it all they have, and try to end the season on a high note, and that's what I expect to happen. Timberland, as I just mentioned, Timberland is actually off this week. As of press time, they did not have an opponent lined up for this Friday. I suppose it's possible they throw something together in the 11th hour, but we're going to move forward saying they don't have a game. Also about the Wolves, they're looking to land in that large spot for the playoffs. We'll see how that works out. In that Cross game for Timberland, Amari Jenkins, he had 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. He also had 11 tackles. That's a heck of a night on both sides of the ball. Roman Watford added 75 yards and a touchdown on the ground for the Wolves. Defensively, Sam Moultrie and Jamal McKinney combined for 16 total tackles, forced some fumbles. So big nights for those guys, keeping Cross out of the end zone. I believe that Cross has not won in the series since 2001, and I'm thinking that was the 9th or 10th shutout in the last 15 games in the series for Timberland. So Timberland, nice job by their defense. Moving forward, St. John's Christian, speaking of the playoffs, the Cavaliers are 8-2 going into a playoff game, the first round, against Calhoun Academy. The Cavs actually had been magical in the fourth quarter of games this season. On Friday night, they couldn't get it done. They lost to Carleton Prep 36-34. It really was kind of an inconsequential game for the Cavaliers because they already had their playoff seeding. They knew how the bracket was going to shape up. So the Cavaliers, like I said before, they're 8-2. They're playing Calhoun Academy. They've already played the Saints one time. Not the Saints. Actually, Calhoun is the Cavaliers. So it's Battle of the Cavaliers. They played them earlier in the year, and St. John's Christian won that game 35-24. That would have been on October 9th. In Friday's loss to Carleton Prep, St. John's Christian quarterback Narayan Bookert, he passed for 336 yards. He hit Hayden Redders and Nick Jimenez on touchdown passes of 14 and 64 yards. Redders finished the game with 5 grabs for 84 yards. Bookert also ran for 60 yards and scored twice, so he had accounted for 4 touchdowns for the Cavaliers. Also got a touchdown from Malik Waheed, did the Cavaliers. And Corey Moreau led all receivers for the Cavs with 7 grabs for 134 yards. Defensively, a couple of guys, including Bookert, got after it on defense. Bookert and Jaden Bradley had 13 and 12 tackles, respectively. Cavaliers taking on Calhoun Friday night in Monk's Corner. Should be a good one. Calhoun's not a bad football team, very unique offense. Be a tough test for the Cavaliers. I'm going to take the Cavs in a close one, though.
I want to find out what Bookert's pre-game meal is.
I don't know.
That's some kind of game.
He's got some of that. You know, you ever see Space Jam in the water? There's like Mike's special drink or whatever, and the guy drinks it, and all of a sudden he's a superstar. That's what Nate Ryan drinks before the game. Mike's special. I can't remember. Mike's Special Brew or something. Anyway, it's in Space Jam. Check it out. One more game I want to talk about real quick before we bring you into the fold, into the mix, into the fray, into the fight conversation. The Stratford Knights are 4-2, and they host West Ashley, which is also 4-2. On Friday night, the Knights are coming off a 56-12 win over Stahl. They rolled up 564 total yards, and they scored the most points they've scored since beating Colleton County 62-0 in 2012. So nice job by the Stratford offense. Demarius Anderson, 2 touchdowns rushing, 2 touchdowns receiving. I know he had probably about 160, 70 total yards. Jaden Martino chipped in 148 yards rushing and a touchdown for the Knights. A couple other kids got into the mix. I haven't talked about these guys this year, so I'm excited to mention them. Jack Fain and Markel Hallman, they combined for 128 yards rushing, and each one scored a touchdown for the Knights. This game right here, Stratford West Ashley, it's a heck of a game. It's a heck of a game. Stratford, they won't be going to the playoffs, so and I don't know for sure if they have a game lined up, a +1 game lined up for next week. So this will be the chance for them to end the season on a high note. They've already beaten Goose Creek. They beat Somerville. So they've got a lot to feel good about. And if they beat West Ashley on Friday, they can feel pretty good about what they did. The Knights had lost 4 in a row to West Ashley before last year. Stratford got it done, 30-21. And one other note, Stratford is looking for a 3-game win streak for the first time since winning 7 in a row in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. All right, well, I told everybody I was going to flip it over to you. Here you go. It's your turn. Basically, what we're talking about is a little border war thing going on between us this week. Fort Dorchester, Berkeley, Somerville, Goose Creek, Cane Bay, Ashley Ridge. I cover one set of those teams. You cover the other set of teams. So let's talk a little bit about Fort Dorchester, Berkeley, since Fort Dorchester is the top dog in the Low Country.
All right.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
Fort Dorchester rolls in there at 6-0. Berkeley, I believe, they're 4-2. Is that right?
They are definitely 4-2.
But it's at Berkeley, so that's going to make it a little more interesting. The Patriots are coming off a 41-7 win at Wando. They had kind of their coaching staff wasn't really happy with what they had done the week before. Even though they won, they weren't really happy with that performance, and I think that showed at Wando. They really took it to them. Dwayne Wright had 209 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Quarterback Zoltan Osborne passed for 206 yards and 2 TDs. Jalen Best and O.J. Washington had the touchdown catches. Washington had 100 receiving yards. The Stags are coming off a 42-20 loss to Somerville. That score is a little misleading because they led at halftime, and then just Somerville shut them out in the second half. I was at that game, talked to Coach Robinson after, and he was saying that, really a play here or there could have shifted momentum, and that game could have been at least tighter, if not a win for the Stags, because they were right there in the first half for sure.
Yeah, it just seems like it's what Berkeley has been doing all year. They put half a game together or 3/4 of a game together. They had to put 4 quarters together. That's what Randy Robinson has been telling me all year. I'm assuming that's what happened on Friday.
I think I like Somerville in that game if they can get the pressure. Fort. I like Fort in that game, not just because of their explosive offense, but if they can keep the pressure on Berkeley like Somerville did, I think I like Fort's chances.
Like I just said, Berkeley has to play its best 4 quarters of the season to be in this football game. They have to have contributions from offense and defense, and the problem is Fort Dorchester is so talented on both sides of the ball. It's tough. This is a tough task of Berkeley to ask them to have to put together their best 4 quarters of the season. However, I will say this: both teams enter the playoffs next week. I mean, I'm assuming Fort Dorchester's taking it seriously, but the playoffs are next week, and this is a non-region game. I guess you have to balance how competitive you want to be versus maybe getting guys hurt. The last thing you want to do if you're Fort is, have beat Berkeley but lose 2 or 3 or 4 starters. And I mean, that goes for Berkeley too. Real quick, I want to mention about Berkeley. As you mentioned, they were in the game against Somerville. They were winning 20-14 at halftime. Solomon Butler, a Western Carolina commit, he grabbed 10 passes for the Stags. 129 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very talented kid, by the way. Also, Troy Reed had a touchdown catch for the Stags. Key here, Fort Dorchester game is defense has got to make some stops and get some turnovers and help the offense out. I see Berkeley maybe scoring a few points here, but they're going to need some help from the defense.
If I'm Fort Dorchester, I meant to mention that earlier, I'm going to not let Solomon Butler beat me. That is a key for them for sure. That kid is talented. He seems to be playing his best right now. He was definitely impressive in the Somerville game, and we've been talking about him all year. So that would be my approach on the defensive staff for Fort Dorchester is, make somebody else beat you. Don't let them just keep dumping it off to Butler out on the side.
Yeah, I think the trick will be for Berkeley is that the offensive line's a whole brand new unit this year. They have to be able to generate a push in the run game and kind of try a little ball control, try to keep the ball away from Ford or something. And that's the key too. I think is Berkeley's offensive line has to be able to move those guys around in there and carve out some yards in the running game.
Yeah.
All right. So are we done with Fort Dorchester, Berkeley?
I am, if you are.
All right. Yeah. Well, another game. Somerville, the Green Wave, who you saw Friday night, they travel over to Goose Creek on Friday. Both teams are 4-2, pretty sure. Yep. This is kind of a rematch of a playoff game last year. Remember that? Somerville had won 4 in a row in the series, and the regular season matchup last year got rained out.
Yeah, I think so.
Weather played. Anyway, they didn't play the game, and Goose Creek hosted them. The Gators put it on them 42-21.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I do remember that.
Manny Mukwamu just ran nuts for the
he was a baller in that game.
He definitely was. Anyway, there's 2 separate teams this year. The Gators are coming off a 28-21 win over your boys, the Ashley Ridge Swamp Foxes. The Gators quarterback, Drew Moore, he had 300 yards passing. He hit Demetri Simmons for a 75-yard touchdown pass. Simmons also ran one in for 5 yards. Kion Smith and James Levine also had touchdown grabs for the Gators in that game. Moore has 14 touchdown passes on the year. He's passed for almost 1,400 yards. Simmons for the Gators has over 1,000 yards rushing, and he scored 7 touchdowns on the ground. Levine and Smith have caught 44 passes, or Levine has caught 44 passes this year and 5 touchdowns. Smith has caught 6 touchdown passes. They are the top receivers for the Gators. And I think if Goose Creek is going to pull the upset here, first of all, would it be an upset? Goose Creek beating Somerville?
I don't think you would call that an upset because Goose Creek's the region champ. They have even records. I think their losses are to similar opponents. Both of them lost to Fort.
But one was significantly worse than the other, right?
I still don't. I don't see. I don't see Goose Creek as the underdog in this game though, with home field advantage.
So is it a toss-up or Gators the favorite?
I think it's a toss-up.
Okay.
I would. I do think Somerville has built up that momentum, and I'm hoping they'll carry that into the game. But I don't think that makes them the favorite for that game. But I do think they'll win a tight battle.
Well, really, what I was going to say is I think a key here is Somerville's defense is pretty good. Goose Creek has to keep Drew Moore upright, and the receivers have to do their part, catch the ball, make sure everything is secured and moving down the field, and and they got to get Demetri Simmons going in the run game, which I have no reason to think that he won't. That's a pretty solid offensive line for the Gators. On the other side of the ball for Goose Creek, I don't know. Who you favoring on that side? I mean, Goose Creek's defense, Somerville's offense. I think Goose Creek's defense really needs to rise to the occasion this week. Is what I'm trying to say.
I see that. Yeah, I think Somerville's offense, looking at their body of work for the season, I think they're a little bit better than Goose Creek's defense. But Goose Creek, hasn't been giving up a ton of points. So
now, as we mentioned earlier about Fort Dorchester, Berkeley, both of those teams are going on to the playoffs. So are Somerville and Goose Creek. And if you look at Somerville's opponent, they got the big dog next week.
Yeah,
they got the four-time defending 5A state champion Dutch Fork. They got to go to Dutch Fork. So I ask you, if you're Somerville, do you want to get anybody hurt? How are you approaching this game at Goose Creek? I don't think you can put all your marbles on. I just don't know. I'm not sure.
that depends on the individual coaching staffs. I was talking with somebody about that earlier, and I think some coaches might be looking toward Dutch Fork, but I think other coaches are just going to be thinking we need to focus on our game, being as polished as we can going into the playoffs. The only way we're going to beat a Dutch Fork is if we're clicking on all cylinders and we're prepared and we're physical this week, so that we don't go in to the playoffs and not be physical in the first quarter. Because in playoffs, that can make all the difference in the world. If you're not as physical as the other team in the first quarter, you could get a couple people hurt that way, and then it hurts you on that end.
I mean, what if you're in a knockdown drag out for 4 quarters and you go to overtime and you lose a couple of starters, and say maybe you beat Goose Creek, or say maybe you beat Somerville if you're Goose Creek, and you exerted all this energy in that game. I don't know. I see it as a tricky little thing to navigate here. You want to win and you want to be clicking on all cylinders, but you also don't want to get guys hurt, and I don't think you want to use up too much of your emotion and energy to, you know what I mean? I just think, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
And don't forget, Goose Creek took it to them in the playoffs last year, so there might be a little bit of a revenge factor there.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think the Somerville Goose Creek game is going to come down to how the Goose Creek offensive line handles the Somerville defensive line and their linebackers and all that pressure. You said it. You touched on it, saying they got to keep their quarterback upright, and that is absolutely the key to this game. I think if they win that battle, they're going to be in that game. If they don't win that battle, I like Somerville.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Since we've picked everything else, I don't know if we picked Fort Dorchester, Berkeley. I got to go with the Patriots. And then this game right here, I am going to take the Gators in a hard-fought, tough game before they play Carolina Forest in the first round of the playoffs. Did you say everything you needed to say about Somerville?
I just want to touch on some of the guys who stood out against Berkeley.
Right. Sorry about cutting you off.
No, that's okay. No, that was. I like it. I like it when we have discussions instead of just reading stuff.
I love to just talk over you.
No, that's fine. I think that's fine too.
All right. Go ahead.
Probably our fans
like I'm doing right now.
When you do that.
Like I'm doing right now.
Hurry, Terrence Gantt had three rushing touchdowns, 121 yards. Colby Shirey and Christian Collin, a senior receiver who's really having a strong second half of the season. I apologize that young man. I had an old roster, and I gave one of his touchdowns the week before to somebody else. But so that was Christian Collins now has at least 2 touchdowns on the year that I know of. In the third quarter, the Green Wave pinned down Berkeley with a punt. And then a fumble led to a recovery, I believe, in the end zone, or if not, on the 1-yard line, and the guy rolled into the end zone. So the defense scored for Somerville. Just wanted to point those things out. That's kind of how they beat Berkeley.
Yeah, big second half. Well, last but not least, as far as our slate of games this week, is Ashley Ridge and Cane Bay. Ashley Ridge is 1-5. Cane Bay is 2-4. These two teams have basically grown up together. The schools opened at the same time in 2008. Early in this rivalry, they played twice a year for a couple of years, maybe 3 years. I don't know. I think 2 years they played 2 times a year because they both were young, and it made sense for them to play each other twice, so they each had a chance to win. And as far as series that are extremely tight, this is it. I mean, they have split the 14 meetings 7-7. I think each one has won 1 or maybe 2 like decisive victories, but practically every game between the two comes down to the wire. Last year it was 14-9. I believe if you take away each team's most decisive win, 12 of the 14 matchups have been decided by about 7 points on average. So these teams still love to get after it and still love to play hard. And it gives. It just seems like to me they're always very similar, and it comes down to the end. Always a very exciting game too. The Cobras, I have to say, are coming off a 21-14 loss to West Ashley in that game for the Cobras. Quarterback Javion Johnson, he went 49 yards for a touchdown, and Leon Staley plunged in from the 1 for the other Cobras touchdown. West Ashley broke the tie later in the fourth quarter to win the game 21-14. Speaking of +1 games, Cane Bay is not in the playoffs, but they have one lined up with Colleton County. They are going to host the Cougars on November the 13th. So this is not the end of the season for the Cobras. Next week will be the Cobras. Look, you're 2-4. If you win these next two, you finish 4-4. You can feel a little better about your season if you end the season with two victories here. I'm going to take Cane Bay this week. It's going to be tight, believe me. But I'm taking the Cobras probably in the neighborhood of 24-21, something like that.
All right.
I'm banking on Jackson Presley making a big field goal for the Cobras late, and the Cobras will win. All right, so tell me about the Swamp Foxes. I know you got something to say.
I do have some stuff to say.
Can I distract you while you do it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm used to it. The thing about this series, it is really interesting because they opened at the same time. And it seems to me like most of the time, most of the years when Ashley Ridge is having kind of a down season, so is Cane Bay. When Ashley Ridge has had some of its better teams, Cane Bay's also had some of its better teams. And then also some years where that wasn't the case, it was still a tight game. So, I like covering this game, and that's probably where I'm going to be Friday night. But there's always a lot of excitement around it. The fans are usually showed up or vocal and stuff. So, I'm going to go with Ashley Ridge because, they only lost by a touchdown to Goose Creek last week. I think that kind of shows
it was a 2-touchdown game late. They blocked a punt.
Right.
That's kind of silly. We go ahead. Yeah, it was a 1-touchdown game, but let's be real. It was a little more than that.
I will say this, though. The Ashley Ridge defense is going to have to stop Cane Bay. That's the key. I think both teams can score. We're going to need Ashley Ridge to play a little bit better defense than it has against some teams this year. Against Goose Creek last week, though, you mentioned the block punt. I believe it was Daquan Law blocked the punt, and Brian fell on it for the touchdown to pull Ashley Ridge within 7. Connor Black threw for 121 yards and rushed for another 71. So that's a young man that seems to be really hitting his stride. He's had some big games as of late. And then Troy Grant rushed for 151 yards, which is a little bit better than what he had been doing, but he's been a stud all year. Rashad Brown led the receivers with 3 catches for 48 yards, and I think he's poised to have a big game. I thought he was going to be their second big weapon behind Grant going into the season, and I think a lot of other teams kind of thought that too, and they just have made sure he's been covered, or who knows. But anyway, defensive wise, TJ Wilson is really having a fabulous year. He had 17 tackles in that game. Delray Ford had 8 tackles, and Latrell York had 7 tackles. So if they can put those kind of stops up against Cane Bay this week, I think they have a chance.
They have a chance to lose a close game, yes. They have a chance to lose a close game. I'm going with the Cobras. And I full disclosure, I actually was listening to every word that you were saying just a minute ago as I was going through my computer.
Well, that's okay.
So if they were watching, they didn't think I was paying attention. I was paying attention.
I'm betting you have some more games to talk about, and if you do, I'm going to make sure to interrupt you in that.
Well, no, I don't know. I think we're to the end here.
You don't have any games left?
I think he got me. Okay. Oh, he got me. No, I'm definitely out of games to talk about on Berkeley County side of things, but we do need to mention our sponsor again, Tony Pope State Farm. Make sure you call Tony Pope State Farm for your car, home, life, and small business insurance. That leads us into our Player of the Week nominations. We do this every week. You can go online and vote, and you can be registered to win a $500 gift card.
Yep.
And I have 3 picks this week. Demarius Anderson, the wide receiver from Stratford, he caught 2 touchdown passes and ran for 2 more in the 56-12 win over Stahl. Drew Moore, the quarterback for Goose Creek, he went over the 300-yard mark and threw 3 touchdown passes to power the Gators past Ashley Ridge. And last but not least, Hayden Redders, a wide receiver from St. John's Christian. He had 84 yards receiving, he had a touchdown catch, and he made 10 tackles against Colleton Prep on Friday. So who do you have?
Fort Dorchester running back Dwayne Wright, 3 scores, 209 yards on the ground. I think he had a catch or 2 in the game. And then Somerville running back Terrence Gaddis, also 3 touchdowns, all rushing, over 100 yards rushing, and a couple of catches in that game as well, I believe. So the battle of the running backs on my side of the fence. We'll see how they do against the Berkeley County candidates.
Yeah, make sure you participate in that. It's an opportunity to support these kids that have done well on the football field, and also, you have a chance to win something. Well, I think that wraps up this week. One more time, call Tony Pope State Farm for your car, home, life, and small business insurance. See you next week.